Welcome to the second oldest community in what is known today as the San Jacinto Valley. First settlers arrived to what they would call Pleasant Valley in 1879. As far as the eye could see was an area of sagebrush land, but these farmers saw the potential for the area. Steadily the homesteaders and town merchants came here, with many arriving in 1882.
To think about it was like a movie.
It's a very unique community. The last place you'd expect.
Many pioneer families that settled here grew to prominence through their participation in civic affairs captured in historical materials. As such, their story is more completely told. Others, like most of us, were more private, with just bits and pieces of evidence of the story of their contributions that were no less important to the development of this area. One of the more important past figures in today's Riverside County unincorporated town of Winchester, for whom it got its name, was from a widow named Amy Winchester. Before coming to California, Amy Winchester lived on a farm in Ohio with her husband Horace and 2 children. It appears that her children died early. Then, in the mid-1880s, her husband died as well. Amy Winchester was described as being almost 60 years old at that time, a gentle, refined woman with many friends. Amy decided to move to Colton, California to live with a nephew and his wife. Amy brought with her about $8,000, which adjusted for inflation today would be around $200,000. People in Colton heard good things about the Pleasant Valley area as the region around the future town of Winchester was then known. She visited Pleasant Valley often, but continued to live in Colton. Amy made her first purchase of land north of Pleasant Valley in May 1886. When a decision was made to put down a town site in Pleasant Valley, the landowners met to discuss, among other things, what to name the new town. Miss John Campbell suggested the name Winchester in honor of Amy Winchester. The name of Winchester was immediately approved, and Amy was very pleased by the honor. The first mention of the new town of Winchester in local newspapers was in December 1886. In January 1888, before Riverside County was created, the town site map bearing Winchester name was submitted to San Diego County. Amy's land in Mountain of Gold was near the site of the first district schoolhouse, which was formed by recruiting 25 children in the area. This is where the first small one-room shack schoolhouse was built, to which these children would come on foot, on horseback, or with horse and wagon from homes as much as 7 miles away. The first teacher was Miss Ella Bailey, and years later this schoolhouse would be replaced by one located on the other side of town. Amy's property included at least a portion of a mountainside that Amy felt there was a strong possibility there was gold on her mountain. Amy liked to come to Pleasant Valley, put on her hat, carry her sunshade, and take long walks up the hill looking for gold. Unfortunately, she never found any and would always return to Colton empty-handed. Amy and many other women in town were believers in the temperance movement. At least 2 land deeds had a provision that the land would revert back to the original owner if it was ever used for vending of intoxicating liquors for drinking purposes. As the town site was plotted, avenues of trees set out as many groves of eucalyptus trees were planted. You might wonder why. Well, in 1850, the eucalyptus trees were introduced during the California Gold Rush by Australians, where the climate there is similar. By the early 1900s, thousands of acres of eucalyptus were planted with the encouragement of the state government. You might be interested to learn, eucalyptus is actually fire resistant. In fact, it actually fights fires by acting as a windbreak and blocking flying embers. Planters believe trees would provide fuel, improve the weather, boost farm productivity, preserve watershed, and thwart a looming timber famine. First and foremost, settlers propagated them to domesticate and beautify the land, to give it more greenery. Soon a small commercial section formed around Simpson Road in what was then Washington Boulevard, and today is called Winchester Road. The first newspaper, Plowshare and Pruning Hook, had offices in the Blackmore Building, a two-story frame building which also accommodated a general merchandise store. A public hall was located on the second floor, and in 1928 a restaurant was opened there. One of the centers of activity was a good hotel run by James and Elizabeth Rice, who was postmaster in 1887. This is when the post office location changed from the original 1880 Rock House location on Domenagoni Ranch to Winchester. The Winchester store, as it was in 1938. It was owned by the Blackmores at this time before it burned down. The store was located across the street from the store present today. There was a blacksmith shop, a feed stable, and a wagon shop. Space was provided for a Methodist church which was built in 1886. The church is still used today. The birth of the new town and the speedy construction of a railroad were encouraging. The small Winchester train depot opened in 1890 and closed in 1929 along the Paris rail line to the north. It served as the primary place where local homesteaders were kept busy raising and shipping grain to market. They earned the reputation of being the largest shipping point on the line. Tilla, oldest of the Patterson children, walks to the railroad depot. She has served as both railroad station agent and Wells Fargo agent at the depot since the day it opened in 1890. The sun is just over the San Jacintos now. Tilla unlocks the depot door and greets two businessmen who've been waiting for the ticket window to open. "Trains will be here soon," you might imagine her telling them. The men buy their tickets and watch as Tilla gathers up mail bags destined for Riverside. One of the men walks over to the tracks, kneels down, and places his ear to the metal rail, trying to gauge the distance of the train from the depot. "It'll be here before you know it," Tilla might say. And if you listen carefully, you might hear that train coming from a distance. By 1890, Winchester had a population of 200. Here were centered the future business interest of a section of country having a radius of many miles of hills and valleys, rich and productive capacity of grains and grasses, minerals and timber. Quick growth of the town continued, with many people coming. William Halsum Sr. and John Patterson burned brick in their kiln, providing material for a brick schoolhouse and other buildings in town. William Halsum Sr., a prominent farmer and stock raiser of Missouri, along with his wife Eunice and 5 of their oldest children, came to Pleasant Valley in 1885 and took 160 acres of government land to build a ranch engaging in diversified farming. A brick house and barn were erected, and their 13 children were attentively reared. 8 of the children are natives of the old Pleasant Valley. The Patterson family, John, wife Maria, daughters Tilla, Ida, and Jesse, and son Clarence, arrived in what is known as Rock House in 1883. The area they settled in was soon to become known as Pleasant Valley, and later in 1887 as Winchester. Born in Ashland, Ohio on August 1, 1841, John passed away on June 8, 1919, in Winchester, California. They had traveled from Yountville through Los Angeles to come to their new home. As they passed through Los Angeles, Maria gathered pepper tree seeds, which she planted at their new home and are still standing today. The family would soon become very influential in many aspects of the community's growth and prosperity. The list of accomplishments the Pattersons made to the development of Winchester is impressive. John Patterson was a major landowner and businessman. He was a farmer, a blacksmith, and tinsmith. He was board member of the San Jacinto and Pleasant Valley Irrigation District. He was board member of the first creamery in the area. He owned a general store, part owner of the local brickworks. Bricks from this operation were used to build a 2-story brick business block, the foundation for the Winchester Community United Methodist Church, and the 2-story Winchester School, and many other homes in the area. Tilla Patterson Hudson was railroad station agent for the Santa Fe Railroad at Winchester from the day it opened in 1890 until the day it closed in 1930. This 40 years of service was the longest of any agent on the San Jacinto branch line. Tilla was a Wells Fargo agent for the Winchester area from 1890 to 1918. The 20 years of service made her the longest-serving female agent in the state of California. She was Riverside County librarian when the county library sent books by train to the local communities, and Winchester's Women's Club member and officer. Clarence was a blacksmith, Gray Miller, Justice of the Peace for the Winchester Diamond District, married to Angie Remsburg, whose family started many newspapers in Southern California. Jessie wrote a prize-winning essay about women's suffrage while in school in Winchester. She died at age 21 from a ruptured appendix while attending State Normal School, which later became the University of California, Los Angeles. Ida was a school teacher for the Riverside School District in Riverside, California. Lloyd was born in 1891 in Winchester. While working for the Santa Fe Railroad in San Juan Capistrano, Lloyd met and married the daughter of the Forrester family. Lloyd died of tuberculosis. In the shadows of the sleepy country town of Winchester lays the Patterson House. The Patterson House is built in 1891 by John Patterson, behind the original adobe that was used for many years after the new house was built. The house measures 30 feet by 30 feet and is constructed of brick. The house is the oldest private residence still standing in Winchester. The house is presently owned by the Winchester Historical Society of Pleasant Valley. Visitors have claimed to experience poltergeist activity, including phantom knocking, doors opening, and objects moving. Many claim it is the spirit of Lloyd Patterson, who died as a young man. Lloyd did not die in the house, but passed away in his sleep in an outbuilding behind the house. Water, an essential ingredient of any community, was supplied by wells. Water to the first settlers to arrive was not an issue, since wells could be dug to supply their meager needs. Soon, with more people arriving and farms being developed, it was realized that a more adequate and reliable source of water was required. In 1892, as the area population swelled, the San Jacinto and Pleasant Valley Irrigation District was formed, and canals were built to bring water in from the San Jacinto River. Winchester's prosperity seemed assured, and there was consideration given to making the community the county seat when Riverside County was established in 1893. But those dreams dried up along with the canals, when developers upstream built a dam that blocked the water, causing the demise of the Winchester Irrigation District, and the town of Winchester's future was in the balance. The resulting demise of the Winchester Irrigation District and reduced water supplies began to limit the growth of the town of Winchester and its agricultural areas. People no longer came to settle in the town of Winchester and Pleasant Valley. They were in favor of the new opportunities in water-accessible San Jacinto Valley and the Hemet area. By 1891, 5 years after Amy came to Pleasant Valley, for reasons unknown, Amy Winchester had disposed of all of her land holdings in the town that had been named for her. Perhaps it was due to the dwindling town prosperity, or never hitting that gold strike. Amy moved to the Los Angeles area, where she spent her last years. By 1900, only the hardiest of people stayed and held on as they watched houses being moved. In fact, the Winchester Hotel was cut in half and relocated by wagon to the Domenegoni Ranch to be their home. It would be another 50 years before steady water supply was brought to the community by the Colorado Aqueduct. Today, a popular stop for locals and tourists passing by is Winchester Farms. The restaurant serves great country food. There is a country market with produce and julian pies made in a popular town nearby. There is a little gift shop and an outside picnic area, and you can walk around, look at all the old farm equipment. Overall, it's a really neat little spot. Leaving here and taking a last drive through the town of Winchester, I want to take you to another place that has become famous out in these parts. You may have heard of it, the Winchester Cheese Company. Jules Wesselink, the owner of the Winchester Cheese Company, was born and raised in Haarlem, Netherlands. Moved to California over 70 years ago when he was in his 20s. He worked at his future in-laws' dairy, and in the 1950s, he moved to a mountain-rimmed valley situated in Winchester to start his own dairy. Throughout the decades, he would make small batches of Gouda, a cheese from his home country, for his own family and to share with friends. After a plunge in dairy prices, he visited his hometown of Haarlem in the Netherlands in 1995 to learn the craft of Gouda cheese making. Upon his return to Winchester, he set up a cheese-making facility on his farm and started producing Gouda, or farmer's cheese. First for milk he supplied by his own Holstein cows, a Dutch breed, and after 2001 he made the tough decision to sell their Holstein herd and focus all their attention on the cheese, buying milk from other suppliers. Commercial production started in 1996 and by 2008 was up to about 100,000 pounds annually. Nestled off of Winchester Road, here's the Winchester Cheese Company. Oh, it's nothing to look at today, and soon this remaining part of Domenegone Valley will become a high-end 4,000 plus residential community. So this will all be raised and plowed under. I'm glad to be able to see this place before that happened, and envision how this wonderful place was back in the day, when they made and stored their cheese in old refrigerated railroad cars under that old European architectural facade. Back then, you would have gotten an informal tour to look at the vats where the milk is poured and stirred, blended with enzymes to make the curds, and the drying rooms where shelf after shelf was stacked with wheels of this wonderful fresh Gouda. One, 2, 3 years old until it was sharp and hard, and wonderful, not cheap either, from the store wrapped in their unique packaging. As you can see, apparently his children weren't as interested in this honored business as he was. You see, Jules Wesselink died in 2011, and continuation of production had remained uncertain at that time. It was said that money was taken out of the business, but never put back in. Not enough to get more milk needed to make more cheese. The kids thought that the land itself is more valuable, which is probably true, upwards around 20 million, which used to be considered the middle of nowhere. It was said the children and his nephew proceeded to fight over the land, and used the proceeds of the company to pay the respective attorneys, which bled them dry. They eventually lost the property through foreclosure. As in the past and in more recent times, Winchester seems to continue to go through the ebb and flow of a community in the crossroads of its future path ahead, struggling to keep its core American values, but knowing it is inevitable suburbia will consume this little country town and the quiet way of life. Well, this was fun, but it's time to say goodbye as we head on to our next Off the Beaten Path journey. Thanks for watching, see you soon, and have safe travel.